Doubting yourself is doubting God. You say you trust God, but you don't trust yourself. और अक्सर लोग इसे humble होना समझ लेते हैं, but it's not humility at all. It's the self distrust. क्योंकि सच्चाई ये है, God doesn't operate separately from you. God operates through you. So when you doubt your decisions, when you second guess your instinct, and when you assume you are not ready yet, you are not questioning yourself. You are questioning the very intelligence that has created you. And when that start to happen, your effort start to feel heavy. आपकी prayer start to feel unanswered and one-sided. Your affirmation simply stop working. Because truth is, not everyone experience the same God. हर कोई एक जैसा परमेश्वर अपने जीवन में अनुभव नहीं करता. Some experience harsh God, some experience generous God, some experience guidance through God, some experience resistance through God. So if the experience is different for different people, but God remains the same, then the difference can't be God. It has to be how the God is being understood by us. और यही अक्सर confusion शुरू हो जाती है, because most people think that God has a personality, and that's the first problem. Because personality comes from the Greek word persona, which means mask. But at the same time हमको ये भी बताया जाता है that God is infinite and omnipresent. Now the question becomes, how can an infinite omnipresent intelligence wears a mask? Like, think about it. The moment something has a personality, it means it has the preferences, which means it has the limitations. How can an infinite intelligence has preference and limitations? How can an infinite intelligence have an edge? Because more often than not, the definition of the God जो हमको बताई गई है कि परमेश्वर ऊपर बैठा हुआ है और वो सबको देख रहा है, सबके कर्मों के हिसाब कर रहा है. पर बैठने के लिए it means God needs to have a bottom. कर्मों का हिसाब लिखने के लिए God needs to have hand. But it just doesn't make any sense. How can infinite have a bottom and infinite have a hand? और इसीलिए भगवान श्री कृष्ण ने भगवद गीता में इसको बहुत क्लियरली बताया है. So if you look at Bhagavad Gita chapter 7 verse 24, it says that avyaktam vyaktimapannam manayante mam buddhaya. अर्थात people understand the formless absolute by imagining it as a person. लोग निराकार परमात्मा को साकार समझ लेते हैं. और फिर उसके बाद भगवद गीता चैप्टर 9 वर्स 29 भगवान श्री कृष्ण कहते हैं कि समोहम सर्वभूतेषु न मे देशवस्ति न प्रियम. आई एम इक्वली डिस्पोज टू ऑल लिविंग बीइंग, नन इज डियर नॉर हेटफुल टू मी. अर्थात मैं सभी प्राणियों में समभाव से स्थित हूँ, ना ही मुझे कोई प्रिय है, ना ही कोई मुझे अप्रिय है. और ये जो दोनों श्लोक हैं, what they essentially tell is that there is no favoritism for the God and there is no personality attached to the God. So they literally remove the mask, they remove the personality, they remove the favoritism. So which essentially mean that God cannot have a personality, which means God does not operate through preference. और अगर कोई बिना किसी प्रेफरेंस के काम करता है तो वो एनर्जी इज impersonal energy. The Bible also says the same thing. In Act 10:34, it says that God is no respecter of a person. परमेश्वर किसी में भेदभाव नहीं करता. God does not react. God doesn't get pleased or offended. God doesn't reward or punish. Because the truth is, God operates as a law. इसे एक एग्जाम्पल से समझ लेते हैं. बिकॉज द फास्टेस्ट वे टू अंडरस्टैंड एन इम्पर्सनल लॉ और इम्पर्सनल एनर्जी इज लुकिंग एट समथिंग विच वी ऑलरेडी एक्सेप्ट एज द वन. लाइक थिंक अबाउट द इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. Electricity doesn't care who you are, it doesn't care about your morality, it doesn't care about your effort. If you touch a live wire, you get shocked. Not because electricity is angry, but because electricity is impersonal. God also works the same way. So for the God, it is impersonal, it has no preferences, no reactions. लेकिन यही अक्सर लोग गलती कर देते हैं, बिकॉज वो सोचते हैं कि impersonal का मतलब है lifeless. But impersonal doesn't mean that it's unconscious. Because उपनिषद इन बातों को बिल्कुल सीधा कहते हैं. अगर आप ऐतरेय उपनिषद देखेंगे तो it says that प्रज्ञानम ब्रह्म, consciousness itself is ब्रह्म. So consciousness is Brahman. And Brahman is not another God, it's God within the form, the absolute intelligence beneath all the appearance. इसलिए भगवद गीता चैप्टर 14 वर्स 27 श्री कृष्ण कहते हैं ब्रह्मणो ही प्रतिष्ठाहम, अर्थात आई एम द बेसिस ऑफ द इम्पर्सनल ब्रह्मन. द इम्पर्सनल एब्सोल्यूट इज नॉट सेपरेट फ्रॉम मी, इट्स माई ओन डीपर नेचर. और मुंडक उपनिषद सब कंफ्यूजन दूर कर देती है बिकॉज इट सेज आई आत्मा ब्रह्मन, दिस सेल्फ, दिस आत्मा is Brahman. So Brahman is the Atman, and Atman is your individual consciousness. And this isn't poetry, it's the description of where experience actually happens, meaning the awareness that is looking through your eyes right now is the channel through which God expresses itself. Now if Krishna is the basis of Brahman, and that Brahman is consciousness, and that essence of consciousness you carry in yourself, that is Atman, it means God is within you, which means God is consciousness, and that consciousness is you. ग्रंथों ने भी यही कहा है. भगवद गीता चैप्टर 18 वर्स 61, ईश्वरः सर्वभूतानां हृदयेषु तिष्ठति. ईश्वर सब प्राणियों के हृदय में स्थित है. If you look at Bible, Corinthians 3:16, do you not know you are the dwelling place of the God? So, if God doesn't change, but your consciousness does, then everything practical depends on your state of consciousness. Because spirituality that doesn't translate into the reality that you want is simply the philosophy. If enlightenment doesn't change your life, then why pursue it? And here's what changes everything. You don't discover God outside your consciousness. Your consciousness determines how God shows up in your life. Not because God changes, but because God, as a law, expresses itself through your awareness. And if your concept of God, conscious or subconscious, conflict with the reality that you are trying to create, you will lose every single time. Why? Because there is nothing more consistent in this universe than the law. And if what you believe about God contradicts with what you say you want, the law doesn't side with what you desire, it sides with your inner state. So when your spiritual framework clashes with the desired reality that you want to create, your efforts start to feel futile, your prayer feels unanswered, and the movement gets blocked. इसलिए नहीं क्योंकि भगवान आपके खिलाफ है, but because your consciousness is working against itself. And always remember this, spirituality without command over your reality is vanity. And a concept of a God that contradicts your desire is a ceiling that you cannot breach. Now let me say it very clearly. If your idea of God conflicts with the life that you're trying to live, you will feel resistance at every single turn. Now once you see this, there's only one question left. How does this law respond? And in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verse 11, it gets answered. So it says, ये यथा माम प्राप्यन्ते तांस तथैव भजाम्यहम्, अर्थात as people approach me, so do I reciprocate with them. Now this single line, it may not sound dramatic, but it quietly explains everything. God doesn't judge you, God doesn't reward you, God reciprocates the state of consciousness that you embody. So if the state is certain, reality reflects support. If state is in doubt, reality reflects hesitation. Not as a punishment, not as a testing, but as a law. The state of consciousness determines your perception, and your perception determines your reality, because reality does not respond to what you want, it responds to what you are. So when someone doubts themselves, they don't become humble, they enter a doubting state of consciousness, and God as a law simply reciprocates their state, not with anger, not with rejection, but with delays, with resistance, and with confusion. Because the truth is, doubt doesn't offend God, it simply configures their response. And when that happens, your efforts start to feel heavy, your prayer start to feel one-sided, and reality feels like it's punishing you and pushing you back. इसलिए नहीं क्योंकि ईश्वर बदल गया है, but इसलिए because your a state of consciousness has changed. Now, here's where it gets even deeper. If reality responds to your state, and your state is shaped by how you relate to yourself, then the relationship that you have with God is not separate from the relationship that you have with yourself. It's the same channel, which means when you doubt yourself, you are not questioning you are questioning the intelligence that operates through you. Because, like I said, the relationship that you have with God is not separate from the relationship that you have with yourself. And if God operates as consciousness and consciousness operates through you, then the way you relate to yourself is the way that God is expressed in your life. So when someone consistently diminishes themselves internally, what they are doing is they are diminishing the God within, and hence they are destabilizing the very channel through which God responds. And reality, it simply reflects that instability, not as punishment, not as judgment, but as correspondence. Because when someone doubts themselves habitually, what they are doing is questioning the intelligence that is operating through them. And when that happens, reality begins to mirror that hesitation. Circumstances reinforce uncertainty, and outcomes appear that seem to justify that doubt. Not because the world is against them, but because they are against themselves. And this is why people can sincerely believe in God, they can pray regularly, and they still experience the resistance in their life. Because your belief in God alone does not determine the response you get from Him. Because your state of consciousness actually determines how you are going to experience God in your life. So if someone maintain a fractured relationship with themselves, they cannot experience coherence externally, because regardless of how spiritual their language out, it just does not matter, because your internal dialogues here really matters. The way you speak to yourself when something goes wrong, the way you interpret your mistakes, the tone you use internally when things don't work, it really matters. And this is not just psychology, this is the lived experience of your state. And since God does not respond to your word or efforts, but to your state, that internal relationship becomes decisive. And this is where most people misread what's happening, because self-doubt, as I said, is usually called humility, but humility means accurate perception, not the self-distrust. While the self-doubt is the division. When someone doubts themselves, they are not being careful, they are divided, because humility aligns consciousness with the truth, while self-doubt fracture that alignment. And as I said, if God operates through consciousness and consciousness operates through you, then doubting yourself doesn't slow actions, it destabilizes your state. That's why people can say, I trust God, but I don't trust myself. That sentence already contains the contradiction. The moment consciousness is divided, the experience of God becomes inconsistent, sometimes supportive, sometimes silent, sometimes resistant. Not because God changed, but because your state of consciousness changed. So self-doubt doesn't make you humble, it makes your experience of God unstable. And that instability is what people label as divine timing, divine mystery, divine testing, when in reality it's the misalignment wearing the costume of humility. Because there are people who seems like, God continue to bless them, God has chosen them, but here's the fact that nobody tells you. People who feel chosen are not spiritually superior, they are not purer, they are not more disciplined, they are not more favored, but they simply don't question their own inner authority. That's it. They don't ask permission from the reality, they don't second guess their instinct, they don't dilute their decisions with doubt, and because of that, their state of consciousness is undivided. And undivided state feels like certainty, certainty feels like momentum, and momentum looks like chosen one, but nothing mystical is happening here. When your consciousness is not split, reality flows cleanly. No hesitations, no internal dialogues, no debates, no energetic leakage. That's why these people feels like they are unstoppable, not because God has picked them, but because they stopped questioning the place from where the God operates. Because truth is, God bless those who bless themselves. God chooses those who choose themselves, and God favor those who favor themselves. Now most people do the opposite. They look outward for the authority, they look outward for the permission, they pedestalize other, and they assume authority exists somewhere else. And that moment when authority is externalized, consciousness weakens and reality reflect that weakness immediately. So what I want you to understand is that chosen doesn't mean selected, it simply means undivided at their state of consciousness. But self-doubt doesn't always mean the same thing. Self-doubt is not always the problem, but misreading it and misinterpreting is. Because self-doubt can be a signal. It shows up when your consciousness, your current and old state of consciousness has detected a mismatch between where you are right now and where you want to go. Because doubt just don't appear at random, it appears right at the edge of the change. Like, think back to the time when you are about to make a bigger shift in your life, a job, a new relationship, or new direction. Right before every one of those moments, doubt showed up. Why? Because that timing isn't accidental. Because doubt is triggered when your current state of consciousness, it senses that it's about to lose the control. This is where your old state panics and it uses doubt as its biggest weapon. So doubt isn't resistance, it's in evidence. If nothing were changing, doubt won't need to appear. Right? The mistake that happens when you promote this self-doubt as wisdom. The moment doubt becomes a philosophy, it start governing your consciousness, and that's where the damage start to begin. Because once doubt is labeled as being realistic, being humble, being responsible, it stops asking the question and start issuing the commands. And it start tell you that you need to slow down, you have to wait, you are not ready yet, just don't move yet. At that point, doubt is no longer an information, no longer a signal, but it's an authority. And when doubt becomes authority, your state of consciousness start to contract, and then reality respond with delay. Healthy doubt asks, where am I misaligned? Destructive doubt asks, nothing moves until certainty arrives. And certainty never arrives in a divided state of consciousness. So self-doubt in itself isn't dangerous, but mistaking it for wisdom is. Because the truth is, God isn't testing you, God isn't delaying you, God isn't withholding anything from you. God is simply reciprocating your state of consciousness. The moment you doubt yourself, you don't become grounded, you become divided in your state of consciousness. And that division is always reflected as resistance, as problems, as delay in your life. That's why effort start to feel heavy. That's why even when you pray to the God, it feels like it's getting unanswered and your reality feels slow. Not because God has changed, but because your state of consciousness stayed. Because where your state goes, your reality follows. So the question is no longer, why am I doubting myself? But the question becomes, and let me write it down, what state am I allowing God to operate through in my life?